Hi, I'm Chad, and welcome back to the Industrial Real Estate Show. Got a great guest this week who is, in my mind, the world's foremost expert in supply chain management as it relates to real estate. His name is Ward Richmond. He's a broker with Colliers based out of Dallas, but he does supply chain real estate for companies all over North America. He's actually worked in over 50 different cities, helping his clients locate properties, work through the lease negotiations, and helping them ultimately lease the space. And he's just a bona fide expert in warehousing on the industrial real estate side. So I'm pleased to have him on the show and dive into a number of topics about site selection, what companies look for when they're leasing space, the difference between older industrial properties and newer modern ones, as well as trends that are happening in the market and what we could expect to see going forward. It's a fascinating discussion. I know you're going to get some value from this. Let's jump into it. Hey, Ward, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Hey, Chad, good to be here, man.
So you are probably one of the busiest guys in the industry right now, working in supply chain. What's keeping you most busy right now?
Man, we're very busy, and I don't think we've ever been busier before. And that's just we work with the occupiers of supply chain real estate is what our team does. And while we're based in Dallas, most of our customers have a multi-market presence, and we really specialize in working throughout North America. And so we're working on projects right now all over North America, US, Canada, Mexico, and pretty much every major market in all three of those countries. And yeah, so we're just trying to help our customers keep up with this crazy, the crazy evolution of the supply chain in 2021. So that is putting them in the right spot and getting them in the right size facility, getting them the right labor supply, and trying to get costs as low as possible and evaluate costs holistically for everything involved, all the way from transportation down to the rental rate. And then on top of that, there's extreme lack of supply in the industrial real estate market. So trying to stay on top of that and find the options and then leverage our relationships with landlords and the strength of our tenants to hopefully go lock down the spaces. So I mean, we're scrambling right now, and we're trying to be as proactive as possible in a pretty reactive environment out there. So
Yeah, and it is a crazy time. I know the CEO of Prologis just announced that they're essentially out of space, meaning that their vacancy rate is so low that they're pretty much full, was the comment that he made. And I think anybody tuning into the news as of in 2021, the buzzword is probably supply chain. So we work in that all the time, but it's now become commonplace for people to be talking about it at the dinner table. So I want to jump into all those things that you brought up that you're doing on a day-to-day basis to get your sense of how you're dealing with the challenges of a market that has essentially very low vacancy rate. In some markets, like some of the coastal markets where you're active, there's essentially 0% vacancy rate. So I guess the first step is when a company is being faced with these supply chain bottlenecks and they need warehouse space and there just isn't anything available. What is your process from just a site selection or a problem solving standpoint to help companies find space in a market with no inventory?
so our team has we have 7 core operating principles that we abide by. The number one being always bringing an expert. And so the strength of our team is really the strength of our local relationships in all the markets across North America. And we're leaning heavily on our local partners to help us keep track of what's out there, what's coming available, and also their relationships with the landlords. And that's just absolutely critical. So we partner on every single deal. We work everywhere, and we use best in class service providers. I was just discussing with someone like the LA market. We have a specialist that works the port of LA and Long Beach, like a port specialist. We have a South Bay specialist. We have an Inland Empire above 200,000 square foot specialist, below 200,000 square foot, a city of industry specialist, and a specialist that handles like the valley. So like that's just for LA. And there's no way you can keep up with a market like LA if you're just trying to do it yourself from Dallas, like some people try to do, or just using like one broker to cover the whole area. It's just impossible. And we're constantly tracking everything that's coming available. We really focus on e-commerce distribution facilities, but also transportation facilities. So those are the transportation facilities are in extremely high demand. They're expensive to build, expensive to duplicate. So we have a system where we're tracking those in the major key markets that are where our customers are really targeting. And that's port markets plus like all the major distribution hubs you'd think of, like a Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, to name a few. But just staying on top of that is absolutely critical. And so that's and then constantly we're proactively sending opportunities that we find that are coming online, in some cases 2 years before they're even going to be coming online, to get it in front of our clients, because really you're seeing in some of these types of facilities that are extremely rare that you're getting in bidding wars on something that's not available for 12 to 18, sometimes even 24 months, depending on the market. So it's nuts. Yeah.
That's crazy to think that people are looking that far out before the tenant has even had an opportunity to the tenant that's in the building has even had the opportunity to survey what else they might move into. There's already somebody 12 to 18 to 24 months out lining up to take that spot when they leave. That's crazy to think about. And we chatted a little bit before about just some of the statistics, because I think everybody's familiar that industrial real estate is a hot market right now, but to get a real good sense of it, especially from your position, working in a number of different markets, what are some of like the ones that people might be shocked to hear?
I mean, look, I've got some recent stats here for the third quarter in the United States. And just to give you a feel, like vacancy rates, the national average is 4.5%. So that's extremely low. Los Angeles is 0.9%. Dallas is 5.7%. For Dallas, that's incredibly low. We were like 10% vacant forever until basically Amazon Prime was created and e-commerce started exploding. And then we've been hovering like 8 down to 6, and we've really been around 6 for a while. Now we're sub 6, so that's crazy. Atlanta's 4.4%, New York 2.3, Chicago's 6%. So that's like your vacancy. And then under construction, there's 477 million square feet. So 47 million square feet of that is in my backyard in Dallas, Texas. The most we've ever had under construction is 35 million. So now it's up to 47 million. Absorption it's just through the roof. I think in Dallas, we're at 33 million in absorption for the year, and I believe leading the country here. And like our record absorption number prior to this was 2016, and that was 23 million square feet for the entire year. And now we're at the end of Q3 and we're at 33 million square feet.
Wow.
So Dallas it's coincidentally, I grew up here and I office out of Dallas, but this is the leading market right now, I would think, in the world, in terms of activity that's going on. And being a big part of that is just we have a lot of land here. So it's not like in LA where you have mountains and an ocean and development constraints and things like that. We have flat land, and it's abundant, and we don't have any geographic barriers to entry like mountains or oceans or anything like that. So it's been crazy. So yeah, man, it's nuts. And then on top of that, like the supply chain, you hear about it. It's really because of COVID and because of COVID-19, like these ports, they just like don't have as many workers as they once had there. And then on top of that, all the consumers have changed their shopping habits. So
Mhm.
my parents are like ordering more off of online and Amazon than ever before, and like getting groceries delivered. and things like that. And when e-commerce ticks up just by a point, that just creates a huge surge in demand for industrial real estate, because the key to making e-commerce work is, if it's growing, you're going to need to have warehouse space to store all the items to get them to people. So then what happened with COVID is you got all these people that can't go to the ports because of fear of COVID or because they're actually sick or whatever. And then you have the surge in e-commerce. So all of a sudden buying habits changed across the world while there's a shortage of workers. Then all of a sudden containers, and like goods being shipped by ocean, that's 90% of the goods are transported by sea. So now the containers, due to like this changes in the way the consumers are buying things, and then shortage of workers at the ports, they're winding up in the wrong place. So then at first during COVID, there was this consumer hoarding of things like toilet paper and all of that. Now companies are trying to hoard. So that goes from everything to raw materials all the way up to actual just whatever t-shirts. And then so this huge surge in demand has created bottlenecks at all the ports. So it's going to be taking longer and longer to get things. And I think there's just, experts say that it could be years for this to get figured out.
Yeah, that's a scary thought too. And to even add to that, I read something the other day that the next generation of workers that would normally be entering the workforce and becoming a truck driver, as an example, they all think that these autonomous vehicles are going to make truck drivers obsolete. So they're not entering in the business, so that the generation that is working in it right now, as they start to retire off, there's nobody to replace them. So you've got these bottlenecks getting the product into the country, and then you've got bottlenecks of getting it from a port to an inland market because of all these constraints in there. And it's really causing problems on everything. That's why we saw like lumber prices shoot up earlier in the year. Other commodities, other things are just hard to come by.
Every commodity.
Yeah,
I mean, I
everything.
think every commodity's gone up. And then the time to get everything has gone up. And yeah, and I mean, right when I finished talking about the ports, I was like, gosh, I forgot to talk about the shortage of truck drivers, and then also now we've already talked about it, but there's a shortage of real estate to go store all this stuff in. So it's nuts, man. I
So
keep saying.
yeah, it is nuts, and we're seeing it all over. When there's that much demand that's outpacing the supply, and even the supply that can be added, uh, that obviously leads to some upward pressure on rental rates. What are you seeing across the board when you're trying to negotiate leases, whether it's something current today or whether you're trying to negotiate something a year out? Is there a spread between what landlords think rental rates are going to be in a year versus what they are today, or are you just a price taker as a tenant right now?
I think you've got to look at, you got to do a holistic cost analysis. And oftentimes that will show you that sometimes, even if the rent's going up quite a bit more than you might have expected it to be, if you can go get a hold of the facility and you're able to have your inventory stored there and have your transportation costs the way
Mhm.
it needs to be and have the labor that you need, and if you're able to get a hold of all of that, then you sometimes need to be the price taker or the price maker, and you get in there and you get aggressive and go get control of the facility, because most of these facilities are going to be in competition. Right when things are hitting the market, there's multiple offers being put in on them, and so it's taking a lot of creativity and aggressive behavior on behalf of tenants to go lock the space down.
Are you
And
s-
yeah,
are
go
you
ahead.
seeing that on like the full spectrum, like a 1 million square foot facility all the way down to a 50,000 square foot facility?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like every project I work on, regardless of the size, there's one. Sometimes there's not even one really good option, but I would say at most there's three really good options. If there's more than three, I'm just shocked.
Hmm.
And that's when you're taking into consideration everything from clear height to column spacing to truck parking, trailer parking, labor, and all of that. And I mean, once you really hone in on the what the customer needs, you're lucky if you're going to find one thing that really fits perfectly. And so since that's the case, then you've just got to move fast.
Yep.
And we have clients taking space 1 year in advance before they need the space just to have it. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that, of companies proactively taking down space just to be prepared.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
crazy.
don't see, I mean, there's no more land. Like Mark Twain, one of my favorite quotes, it's buy land, they're not making any more of it. So there's no more industrial land really, even in Dallas, where there's land as far as the eye can see. Most all of the good land sites, unless you're just getting way out into the, like hour plus outside of the metro area, is under developer control. So and we're building 45 million square feet now. So if that trend continues, we're about to bust the billion square foot mark. And it's just, eventually there's not going to be any more industrial land left. And then you're going to be in a situation like you have in LA or New Jersey. Land here is still like, you can go get land here in some markets for, let's say, $2.75 or $3 a foot. On the expensive side, it might be $10 a foot. But I just saw something like in New Jersey, it can be $100 a foot somewhere, to go find industrial land. And those markets that don't have the land, those prices are just surging through the roof. But if you need to go be positioned close to New York City and get your product to all those people there, then the cost savings by being strategically located close to New York is going to outweigh the costs associated with the real estate that's needed. That's just going to be, I mean, historically that's been say 3 to 4%, and that's what a lot of people's goals are. But I mean, transportation is typically that 50%, so it's the big number.
Yep. I know some of those markets that are very dense and have those constraints about being able to build in certain directions. There's that appetite to do multi-story warehouse building now. Have you been involved in that or seen any of those up close?
I haven't ever done a multi-story deal before, but yeah, I have seen it up close. I toured the first multi-story spec building was built in Seattle by Prologis, and I toured that in, I believe it was the spring of 2019, so a year before COVID hit. I was in Seattle and got to go check that out, and I believe Amazon and Home Depot moved into that, to give you a feel for the type of customers that are occupying that. I know Amazon's doing lots of multi-story facilities everywhere.
Yeah, well, they just don't have many options. Like you said, if they physically can't get the land to build on, their only other option is to pay a higher price per square foot to secure the land and then go vertical to make sense of the number. Because if they can only buy an acre and it works out to $2 or $3 million an acre, and you can only put a small 15, 20,000 square foot building on there, that doesn't solve their problem. But if they can go up and increase the density, then perhaps it makes sense of those numbers. So that'll be interesting. I'm in a market similar to yours where we can theoretically build in every direction, but it still needs to be serviced. There still needs to be a master plan for the land. Those things take a long time to work through the bureaucracy of municipality to get it zoned, get it ready, get it prepared, and the utilities to it. So that's still a process that can take multiple years. So we're also running out in that same problem, even though we can theoretically build in every direction. So these cities like LA and New York and New Jersey that are out of land, it's crazy. That number that you gave on LA being 0.9%. I knew that they were under 2%. I didn't realize it was getting that aggressive that they're now seeing sub 1% vacancy. At that level, there essentially isn't any vacancy. Things are just leased the moment they come available.
Yeah. And I think rates just keep going up there. And we just finished a project, and as we finished it and signed leases, you're seeing the rates continue to just click up like by the week in surrounding properties. To give you some feel for lease rates across the country, at the end of Q3, San Francisco is like 1975 in the San Francisco Bay Area of square foot. LA 1357, New York $12, Houston 7, same with Philly and Detroit, and then Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, we're in that 6 range, like 550 to 650. So that's a good little trend for you there.
That's
And yeah, so it's swinging all over the place. But as soon as this land, industrial land, gets developed, and you can't, and it's not going to be there anymore, and then you're going to have some these supply constraints where we can't be building 45 million square feet at the same time, and then I mean, I think you'll continue to see the rates push everywhere.
so I know nobody has a. Oh,
And e-commerce is still in its infancy, right? So
yeah.
it's like in the 20% area, and there's still a long way to go. So as long as people keep buying online and wanting their product faster and faster, which has been the trend, then these industrial real estate prices are going to go up because the demand's going to continue.
How long do you see this going on for? Is this just going to be an issue for the foreseeable future until something else disrupts it, or there's some economic event that disrupts it? All things being equal, do you see this continuing to be a trend for the next several years?
I do. I tell people, and like, unless there's like an apocalyptic type event, or like you said, like there's a huge shift that I can't see happening in the way we purchase things as consumers. Those two things. And then I talk about an apocalyptic type event, like for instance, us all getting locked in our homes for several months, and not being able to go to work, and people being unemployed. And then, I mean, I was freaking out the first couple of weeks of COVID. I'm not like I'm not a psychic medium, so I was worried, and I work 100% commission, and all deals came to a crashing halt when that occurred. It wasn't like COVID happened and we said, "Oh, this is going to be wonderful for the industrial real estate market," but thankfully, considering that's my business, it has been. Yeah, something like COVID actually helped it, but that's not to say there's some other type of event that could be just blindside us the same way COVID did. It's like my favorite punk rock song is by a band called Operation Ivy, and it goes, "All I know is that I don't know nothing." So I don't know. Yeah, I think if things continue the way they are now, sure, it's going to go on for as long as the eye can see, but um, anything can happen, right? And you don't know what's coming next and how things are going to shift and how that may impact things in the future. But I've been saying for a while, it's only a matter of time before industrial rents get higher than office space rents. And I think in some markets that could be true already.
Well, if San Francisco is about to crest $20 a square foot, that I can't imagine their office is that much higher than that. That's crazy to think about.
I haven't done an office deal in San Francisco, but I think they might even be up like close to 100 there for office space, but who knows? Um, it's interesting though, and also as these infill facilities get built and retail gets repurposed, and I think those facilities can start setting new record rates for rent. And places, markets like Dallas, if you can go get a old uh, retail building that has a ton of extra land that you can use for parking all of these vans, and then you can go get it rezoned to industrial, those are going to be unicorns. And I think people will pay top dollar for them just because of the transportation costs that you can save, and the competitive advantage you can gain by having ownership of such a facility.
Well, that's a really good point too, because traditionally those retail centers are located in residential areas, or at least within close proximity to residential. So all those guys trying to get that last mile delivery, if they can rezone it so that it works for their distribution needs, they're right in the heart of where they want to be anyways. So yeah, I agree. I think that could be a great opportunity. Those old decrepit malls that aren't doing anything anymore, to move those into warehousing. And that's actually kind of a natural point, because I did want to get your thoughts on just the functionality of buildings and what you're seeing between kind of that older warehouse stock and a modern building, and the different standards that they're being built to with ceiling heights and automation in mind. How would you characterize the progression from that older warehouse space, call it like something built in the early 80s, all the way to a modern building being constructed right now?
I would just say bigger in all directions. And so the clear height has gone from, in the 80s, I think they were building a maybe 18-foot clear. And then they moved to 24-foot clear in the 90s. And now we're at 40-foot clear. and some places higher where they're building those multi-story buildings. So column spacing has gotten wider and buildings have gotten larger. A 1 million square foot building. I remember the first 1 million square foot lease I heard of was around 2008 in Dallas. And now there's just, 1 million square footers plopping down left and right here. And it's just the new norm to go for companies to go lease those size buildings. So they've gotten much larger. There's a need for more dock doors. There's need for more parking for employees because, especially for e-commerce operations, the pick pack operations require a massive amount of labor, and so you need employee parking, and then more truck parking than ever. So there's more demand for truck parking. So everything's just bigger, 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 and that's really the trend that I see. More dock doors, more trailer parks, more clear height, more column spacing, and you do all that. And I was talking to an architect the other day, and we are looking at building design. They said, "What do you think about the office?" Like, I don't care about the office. Let's talk about the parking, and let's talk about the ingress, egress, and how much room is there. Because then I talk to truck drivers when I'm looking at understanding buildings, because I want to understand them from their perspective, and that they want better turning radiuses, and it's about how fast can you move freight in and out of these facilities. And to do that, this is more and more and more of everything.
I know you're heavy on the tenant representation side, but you'll also be dealing with a lot of landlords and developers along the way. What are you seeing on that side of the business right now from an ownership and developer side? Is that's obviously getting a lot more competitive. There's developers fighting for land. There's investors fighting for property. Have you noticed any trends as we've gone through this warehouse boom in the last several years?
Just that prices keep going up, cap rates keep going down, and it seems like there's just a frenzy to build as much as this as possible, strike while the iron's hot.
I interviewed Peter Linneman, the economist, a while ago, and he said these conditions are perfect for the risk of overbuilding, because just as real estate as an industry, we have a propensity to always overbuild. Demand heats up. Developers see that carrot and they just keep building. Do you see that happening anytime soon, or is there just so much built up demand that this is going to sustain itself for the foreseeable future?
It's such a double-edged sword, because I'm in the business of representing tenants. So that would be that would make my job a lot easier if there were some overbuilding to occur for at least a couple quarters, so that we go take advantage of it. But then at the same time, I don't know what that would mean for the economy, and what that's why the demand has slowed down so much. So that would be a little concerning to me. And of course, again, I have no crystal ball, so I don't know. And I started my career in 2006, so I saw the very end of that bull market right into the Great Recession, and that was the early stage of my career. And then Amazon Prime got created, and that's really what seems to have sent everything into the frenzy that we've been witnessing since 2011 or whenever that was, and it just keeps pushing. So we'll see. Yeah, these numbers in Dallas right now are just staggering. So I don't know what to think about it, but if the demand continues, then it's great. Because the problem is, if this wasn't getting built, if we didn't have 45 million square feet under construction and we're absorbing 35 million in 3 quarters, then we're going to be in trouble. So it doesn't seem like the developers are getting greedy and overbuilding. It seems like they're just trying to keep up with the demand, and the demand is there right now. So if it goes away, that it'll be interesting to look back and say, why did the demand go away? Because I sure can't see what that factor might be to cause that to happen right now.
Yeah, and you're right. There is no way to predict that because, like you said, e-commerce can still take market share away from those traditional brick and mortar retailers. So demand could conceivably continue growing for the foreseeable future, at which point the developers just can't possibly keep pace with the absorption and the demand. So for every comment that we run the risk of overbuilding, there's the corollary to that where we might not be able to supply the amount of demand that's already there. So it'll be a fascinating thing to watch for the next few years.
Yeah, I guess one thing that could happen is if e-commerce growth slows down, and
Mhm.
it's just been on this direct upwards trend, and then COVID it went like this. But if it goes back to this, we still should be okay. And I think we're dealing with that COVID commerce just settles, and hey, forever, for the rest of this century it just hovers at 30-40% or something, then at that point that's when the overbuild could occur, I guess. But if it goes up and becomes the primary way people are buying things and becomes 80-90%, and I think we still have a long way to go. But yeah, when it gets up there, then I would be a little more concerned. And I'd be concerned, where is the industrial land, and where are the truck drivers? We're going to have that much industrial real estate. So hopefully those autonomous vehicles are coming. And then you talk about the green initiatives too. It's something I left out on your question earlier about these buildings, but I think that's going to be a big thing that you're going to start seeing, are green initiatives in these buildings. And you're going to see EV charging stations. You're going to see solar panel roofs all over the place. I think most buildings that get built in the future are all going to have solar panels on them. And they're putting in extra lights to light up the warehouses, the LED lighting that's being put in the warehouses, xeriscaping that they're doing to conserve water. They're sprinklering the landscaping using wastewater instead of fresh water, and all kinds of green initiatives, I think, are going to happen because all of this industrialization or whatever it is, just building all these buildings, it's really is taxing the environment. I think everybody's seen that, and especially the companies that are using it, forward-thinking companies like Amazon, are recognizing this, and I think they're all going to be doing their part, and at some point in time the government's going to get involved and make sure they're doing their part. So I think you'll see a lot of extra money being spent by developers for all of these eco-friendly type things and green initiatives.
Yeah, I'm very glad you added that in because I see that trend developing as well. Where even just something as simple as solar panels on the roof, like you mentioned, can just be a way to be a little bit more friendly for the environment. And if somebody takes that first step and advances it and goes even further than that, they'll make a building that differentiates itself from a building that hasn't done anything. So there probably will be that bigger spread going forward where you're looking at an old, tired industrial building, and then you compare it to a modern building with higher ceilings, wider column widths, and they're environmentally friendly. There's going to be a pretty big difference between how tenants view those two properties. So I think that's a really good point. Last thing I wanted to end on, we're both members of SIOR, and it's a great organization for putting out information. I read their reports all the time, as I'm sure you do. What other ways are you utilizing to get more market information, to see trends happening in the industry? Are there resources that you're going to right now to that if someone listening to this, if they want to learn more about it, that you could direct them to so that they could get more education on it?
I lean heavily on Colliers, so that would be, call me and ask me, and I can leverage the Colliers, incredible Colliers research team that we have. And that's where I get a lot of my data from. I love just going to LinkedIn, and I normally check in on LinkedIn a couple times a week, and there's just tons of great info there. I have lots of good friends at Prologis. I actually co-host a quarterly podcast that with Prologis, and get to bring them on. And through doing that, I've met some great people within the organization. So they owning more industrial real estate in the world than anyone else. They're a phone call I make and ask them what they're seeing and ideas that they're coming up with. They're investing a ton of money in innovation. So they're one of my go-to stops for hearing what's going on. And they also just have direct access to all of the customers. And then again, we have all of our tenant clients, and constantly meeting with them. And I'm active in the IWLA, which is the International Warehousing Logistics Association. And I try to attend multiple supply chain conferences each year with end users to understand the trends that are going on within the supply chain world, because at the end of the day, that's really what's driving this need for the real estate, which is just a little tip of the iceberg of what's really happening. And the warehouse space itself is just one component of a million that it takes to get goods manufactured and then into the homes of us as consumers in as fast of amount of time as possible.
Yeah, well said. And then you also have your website, supplychainrealestate.com. So I could put links to all those in there, to your LinkedIn page, your website. Is it a podcast that you're doing? I haven't caught any of those, so I'd be very curious myself to listen to more of those.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you go to just like Apple Podcast and put my name in, probably all the podcasts will come up. But Supply Chain Now is a company that I partner with, and I do a real estate podcast. We do a quarterly supply chain real estate podcast, and then sometimes I'll just pop on. And we just did one where we interviewed Kelly McLaughlin, who's a truck driver with Schneider, and got to hear her perspective on being a female truck driver, long haul truck driver right now in 2021, and hear everything they're going through. So I like to talk about things like that as well, in addition to real estate.
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear a story on that. I'm sure she's got a fascinating tale to tell. So,
She really does, man. She
yeah,
does.
I look
And
forward
that's
to
all
that.
and also on my website, you just go to the podcast section, and all my podcasts are there. I'll be putting our podcast on there, and that's another good place to go keep up with all the podcasts I do.
Awesome. Well, you've written a couple articles on Medium as well, which are great articles.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. My Alcoholic Manifesto articles. Is that what you're
Right.
talking about?
That's how I first actually came to know you. And then we connected, I think, on LinkedIn, but that was the first time I saw your name was on part 1 and part 2.
Oh man, that's I'm glad you were able to read those. Yeah, a few years ago, well, almost 6 years ago, I quit drinking, and I'm sure you know, like in the world of commercial real estate, yeah, it's a big part of. It can be a big part of the culture,
Huge.
drinking and entertaining clients and socializing and all of that. And I I was performing, at a seemingly high level, at least from my perspective back then, and I knew I was drinking too much, but I didn't know it was that like it was this huge issue. And then I figured out that it was. So I quit drinking 6 years ago, and then really just it changed me, I think, as a human being, and I recognized that it actually was like really having a massive impact on my behavior and my life, and like the way that I made decisions, and the person that I was becoming. And so after a few years after I quit, I think I wrote of my first Medium article on that topic, just because that's kind of, I mean, what really woke me up is I heard someone else's story, and that led to me deciding to quit drinking. And so I felt like I should tell my own story and put it out there. So I posted it on Facebook first, and I got a lot of good feedback. And then I just woke up one morning and said, I'm going to post this on LinkedIn also. And so I did that, and it's gotten a lot of feedback, and it's saved me a lot of time explaining to people at real estate dinners that I don't drink and why I don't drink. So if anyone ever asks, I just like text them a link to my Medium articles and say, here's my story. And I still love going to those dinners. I love going to conferences. I feel like I get so much more out of them. I speak at them now. I used to like hide during the daytime and just go out at nighttime to the happy hours and the dinners. So I'm fully engaged and wide awake in the mornings. And it's been a wonderful thing for me personally. And I don't think it's for everybody, but worked out for me. And I think it's important also to destigmatize You know, the fact that drinking is this thing that can't be talked about, because I think it should be talked about. And if anyone does have a problem, I always am very open to discuss. So you can always hit me up on that too. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about is mental health and alcohol and addiction and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'll post both articles in there because they're not only very personal, like you tell your story in there and you don't leave out details about like how you liked every type of alcohol at different times, and there's a Coors Light if you're outside, and certain things at certain places. So like you share like those intimate details about how much you liked it, and then it's funny. Like your story, like there's a couple times where I've laughed out loud just at how you tell us. So it's a really good story. And you're right, this industry is so prevalent of having like that beer after work, or some guys are getting together, have a couple drinks, or even at an open house they might be serving it and everybody's drinking. So it's really common, and you do almost look like a bit of an outsider if you're not. So I love the point you make about removing the stigma on that, because it is important. The mental health, and making sure that your mind is healthy, your home life is healthy. That is just as important as having any success in this business. So I'm glad you were comfortable. I wanted to throw that out there as just a little taster to see if you'd bite on it. And I would have understood if you'd been like, yeah, read the article if you want. But I'm glad you expanded on that a bit, because I agree with everything you said on there. It was very well said.
Thanks. Yeah, and so Chad, I'll tell you this here first. You have the exclusive on it, but I'm working on a book that and a lot of it's on that topic, and so I'm excited about it. I wrote the first draft during quarantine. During quarantine, I realized I've got probably a month here where I can go write a book if I ever want to do that in my life, before things hopefully get back to normal, which they did. And so I wrote the first draft then, and I'm still working on it, but I hope to have the book finished, within the next year. And I'm really excited about it. And it's a lot of it's about that.
Well,
So
when you have it ready, let me know, and we'll do a follow-up interview when you have it ready, and we'll just talk exclusively about it, because I could talk about that for hours too. So when you have it ready, let me know sometime in 2022, and we'll do another follow-up on that.
love it, man. Thanks for having me on today. So this has been a lot of fun. Great connecting with you, and hopefully we get to cross paths in person soon. And I can buy you a drink, and I'll have a non-alcoholic beer with you, and we can.
I'll join you with the non-alcoholic one. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Very nice.
let's do
Very
that.
nice.
I do want to actually come to Texas sometime in 2022, and Dallas is on my list. So either I'll pop into your office when I'm there, or if we're cross paths somewhere in between, that'd be great too.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful, man.
Okay,
Well, really
awesome. Well, thanks
appreciate
again so
it.
much for your time, Ward, and your insights. That was really good. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, take
I'll
care.
talk to you soon. All
Sounds
right.
good, man. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. So I wasn't sure at the end if Ward would be comfortable talking about it, but based on those two articles that I had read, he had a very personal story to tell about his experience with alcohol. And like Ward mentioned about talking about this being a stigmatized issue, particularly in real estate, and certainly not restricted just to commercial real estate. There's other industries and even non-industries. Just it's a problem that people can have, and it was such a profound story when I read those two articles, and I'll put links to those below. But I had to. I had to hear it from him and get his understanding on why he did it. And you could see that mental health is just a really big topic for Ward, and it should be for everybody. I know that I talk about industrial real estate on this channel pretty much exclusively, but I also don't want to ignore the fact that somebody might be going through issues like this right now. And if you are, whether it's something to do with alcohol or just mental health, and you want to have someone else to bounce an idea off, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to just be a sounding board. No judgment, no expectations that I'll try to solve anything by any means, but just have somebody to listen to. If I can do that and help somebody out just by being a set of ears to listen to, please feel free to reach out to me. And I think Ward would also extend that same invitation if someone else just wanted to get more info on Ward's story, or perhaps something that he did that helped him along the way. I think Ward would be another guy that would do it. So just know that there's people out there that can help. If you are experiencing any stress or frustration and things are just feeling overwhelming, by all means, please reach out and I will do my best to get back to you. We could set up a time to chat or email, whatever you're comfortable with. In any event, I really do thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and I look forward to catching you in the next video. Thanks.